Action! Get these three things right to pass your HSBC video interview. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English here with another video to help you get hired. Today we're going to be dealing with the international banking giant HSBC and how to pass their graduate first round interview. Coming in at number 13 in the Times Top 100 rankings for top graduate employers for 2023 and 2024, and with over 600 graduate jobs available, HSBC is probably one of the premier destinations for graduates wanting to break into banking. Today we're going to talk about what you can expect from their online job simulation. Online job simulations are essentially an amalgamation of different types of tests, and that's where we're going to cover the three key parts that you're going to have to master in order to pass this process for HSBC. So firstly, I'm going to tell you what you can expect from the HSBC Immersive Online Assessment. Secondly, I'm going to walk you through each of the three parts, what to expect and what you can do to pass each of these sections. And lastly, I'm going to share with you who I believe is the best online test provider for you to pass their initial first round online tests, having been through these myself with private clients one-to-one. What can you expect from the HSBC Immersive Online Assessment? For those of you who are not familiar with job simulations or immersive online assessments, these are essentially a mixture of different types of tests, all done in an online environment. They tend to always include a couple of video interview questions. Then you might have numerical, logical, situational judgment tests, verbal questions, replying to emails, sending out case studies. We've seen lots of these different types of tests to really portray a more realistic working environment. With HSBC, this is going to be split up into three parts. You can expect to write a business email in response to a problem, to answer situational judgment test questions in terms of real life working scenarios that you might come across and how you would respond to these scenarios, and also to answer a couple of video interview questions. The memories that we looked at from this year from successful candidates talked about anywhere from 3 questions and up, and we're going to be covering 5 questions and what to think about when answering these types of questions. So let's start off by talking about how to write a business email. Now, if you've never written a business email before, you might not understand how this is done. And it's really broken down into 3 parts. The question or the problem that you're going to be posed will vary depending on the role that you're applying to. And also, one thing to always bear in mind with these types of tests and simulations is that questions change. There will be a large bank of questions which may change, particularly for these type of fixed cases and scenarios. So don't expect to get the same questions as your friend, basically. So say, for example, you receive an email which is outlining some problems to do with payments or to do with a client or to do with a project, and then you're basically told to write an email to your manager, to your colleague, to outline what needs to be done. And I always go through the same 3-step process when explaining to somebody how to write a business email. Step number 1, the introduction. So this is where address it to the person. Dear Sir, Madam, dear Mr. Jones. You would explain, what is this email for? Are you replying to somebody? Are you replying on behalf of somebody else? Essentially, in the first 2 or 3 lines, you really want to summarize what this email is about. Dear Mr. Smith, please find enclosed 3 recommendations for how we should upgrade our IT systems for Barclaycard. That really encapsulates what you're going to talk about, the substance, and also sets an expectation for what is going to be in the email. Step number 2 is the body. Now you can lay this out in bullet points, you can lay this out as paragraphs, though I would suggest that you keep them short, no more than 3 to 5 sentences, where you would logically outline the answer to the question that you're trying to solve, whether it be recommendations, summarizing problems, outlining solutions. So you might say solution A potentially could be blah blah, pros of this are this, cons breakdowns of this are this. So for those of you who are familiar, very similar to writing a condensed business report, and you outline those out one by one by one. Because why have you been set this task? You're writing a business email to see how you can condense and communicate information in an objective way. So this is not about you choosing what you believe is important or what you believe that person needs to hear. Very often I see this mistake. People will miss out massive chunks of information just because they don't deem it to be important. You want to summarize, yes, shorten, yes, but not just cut stuff out because you don't believe that it's relevant. I understand this is being done under time constraints, so stuff might get dropped, but don't just leave it out. And step number 3 is your conclusion. What do you want your audience to do next? What is the thing that you want them to do? Do you want them to just read, understand the information? In which case you might say, thanks so much for your time. Here's my contact details. If you need anything more, please don't hesitate to let me know. Do you need a response? Do you need a confirmation in order to go ahead with a project? What is the result that you are seeking to achieve with this email? You're really just conveying information and be like, that's everything that I have for you. Thanks so much for your time. If you need anything, here's my contact details. Please do let me know. And that's writing a business email. Now, a good way that you can practice this is really just writing summaries of business news. A long time ago, when I was running a different coaching company between 2013 and 2018, this was a really common exercise that we would get students to do. So we actually had a news feed, so we would send through a couple of bits of business news every week, and we'd say, right, why don't you summarize this in your own words and then send it back to us. And it got people into the habit of just being really good at reading information, summarizing information, and creating an output for that information. So if you struggle to do this, just go and find a recent piece of business news from BBC Business, something that's easy to digest and understand, and try doing this yourself. Now let's move on to talk about SJT questions. Now SJTs are known as situational judgment tests, and they are increasingly more popular across, I would say, all of the Times top 100 companies. Now, really the situations don't tend to be too different, but are relatively specific to the role. So you might have a different one at Arup, than at Deloitte, than at HSBC. They're going to be relatively, but they're not so specific that you need any type of industry knowledge. Now, if you're not very good at SJT tests, you're really not alone. Most of the people that I deal with, when I'm talking to them about online tests, struggle with SJTs. That's actually why I created a course called SJT Sorted, because I had so many people asking us for help trying to do SJTs. Now you can go to courses.jobreadyenglish.com and buy that yourself. And what I'm going to outline for you now is really just a 4-step framework that I teach with a load of different examples. And of course I explain the minutiae of this, but just to understand the what to do when it comes to SJTs. Bearing in mind, most people don't struggle with what's the best and the worst answer. You're young, bright, and intelligent. And if you've had any sort of world experience, it's relatively obvious to know what to do. Most people struggle with the middle. So you'll get a situational question, basically get asked, what should you do? And then you'll have 5 different choices that you could choose from. Most people will struggle with 2, 3, and 4. And actually, this is not an English problem. Often I have people reach out to me, don't speak English as a first language, and they'll say to me, oh, Mike, I think it's just that my English isn't good enough. Believe me, I've looked at some of those tests and they're difficult even for me sometimes to get the nuance, which is where I invented these steps just to help people to think about what I call filters to answer SJT questions. If you want to know more about how to pass SJT questions, please drop me a comment down below. Just say SJTs or let me know what your struggles are with online tests. And if I get enough comments, I might make a video on that subject. Let's go through this 4-step framework. Step number 1 is, what is the competency? Now, I've been through lots of different types of SJT questions and also read lots of different guides from online test providers. And what I found was most SJT questions break down to 5 skills. They could be cognitive skills, decision-making, problem-solving, strategic skills. Personality traits, flexible and adaptable, resilience, meaning your ability to overcome failure, conscientiousness, independent. Number 3 was interpersonal skills, social intelligence, effective communication, relationship building and persuasion, getting somebody to do something you want them to do. Number 4 is attitudes, openness to criticism, success orientated, working under management or organizational thinking. And number 5 was leadership skills, encouraging development, teamwork, responsibility, encouraging innovation, maintain authority and resource management. Once you know the competency, and this is something that does require some practice, then you can sort of understand what are the important skills to have and what are the not so important skills to have. Step number 2 is the context, and I went through this about 2 years ago when we released our PwC video for 2021, which actually PwC asked us to take down. And I had a 6-step framework, or 6-part framework, sorry, I keep using steps, which was, the context is what's the story? So who's involved? What do they need? Who gets priority if there is more than one person? What are your responsibilities and obligations, i.e. in what capacity you're engaged in this scenario? Very often you're engaged as a graduate, right? But you might be saying you're a manager or you're a team leader, or you're amongst your peers. There's no hierarchy there. What is your position and the extent of your authority, and what is the wider context of the role you are applying to in real life? Why is context important? Because it could be the case that you may find it hard to pick what's best and worst, but if you know who gets priority, then it's easier. If you know what are your and obligations, that gets easier. You know your position and extent of your authority, that gets easier. So these are really defining questions. And it seems like there's a lot of information here, but the more that you practice this and refine this, the easier that you'll find it and the more automatic this will become. Step number 3 is all about how to rank responses and what I call the 3 filters. So there's best versus worst, there's effectiveness. So really SJT is about what's effective and what's ineffective. So effective things are active, considered, i.e. they are a measured response, not a sort of a reaction. And they're altruistic, so they're for the greater good, not just for the good of yourself. Whereas not effective are passive, do nothing. Negative, irrelevant, doing something which isn't related to the context. Selfish or just hasty or rushed. And the third filter is rationalization, which is kind of thinking, if I take these 2 apart, actually which one is slightly better than the other? And bearing in mind that can be very slim in terms of the difference. But again, the more that you practice, the better that you're going to get it in. Step number 4 is just some ideas to think about in terms of how you can get better at SJTs. Active is always better than passive. Conservative is always better than risky. Positive is always better than negative. Effectiveness is always better than logic. How does every response affect the main problem by itself? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? Or does it not affect it at all? And think about how each response then affects everybody involved. How does it affect you, your clients, your colleagues, your manager? And also what I call the hierarchy of obligation, which is basically what's most important. Well, actually, it's the organization. I'm sure organizations won't say that, but it is, right? It's going to be the organization, your client, the manager, you and your colleagues are going to be the least important. And lastly, it's how would you act in an ideal world? Stick around until the end of the video when I'll let you know about my favorite online test provider and how you can find out more about HSBC's online tests and actually practice some fairly realistic tests that are really going to help you with SJTs. So finally, let's move on to the last part of the immersive online assessment or video interview, and that's actually going to be the interview itself, the questions that could get asked. Now, recent memories said that there were 3 questions that got asked. We couldn't really find anything about timing, so we're going to assume that you have 2 minutes to answer and 1 minute to think. And these will be probably interspersed between different questions. So we picked out 5 questions we came across which seemed interesting to us and also seemed to occur more often than others. So they seem more likely to happen. And this was based upon recent information from publicly available sources from the last 6 months. Question number 1, tell us about yourself and your relevant experience. Now, this is quite a big question to answer because it's really tell me about yourself. Why do you think you're right for this job? Now, if you've never done an interview before, the best place that you can start is learning how to answer the question, tell me about yourself. Because this is really about you being able to pitch yourself, to do a elevator or a sales pitch in 2 minutes or less. And we tend to break this down into 6 parts. You can find out more if you look up tell me about yourself, Job Ready English. It will come up with one of our videos, which is who are you and what are you doing now? What have you done in the past 3 years? What would you like to do? Relevant work experience, extracurricular activities and volunteering, and finally, skills and interests. Now you notice that in the last 3 parts of that, we're talking about work experience, other experience, skills and interests. This is where you can bring in your relevant experience. What about, you're thinking, if you're applying for HSBC's commercial banking graduate program and you have no experience in commercial banking? That's absolutely fine. And you're probably in the majority of people and not the minority. So what do? Pick out the skills, the soft skills that you need for that role, whether it be attention to detail, numeracy, leadership, teamwork, whatever that may be. And just demonstrate where you have had those skills, but in another job. You might have had those skills working as a shelf stacker in Aldi. You might have had those skills being the vice president of one of the societies at university. You may not have direct relevant working experience, but you probably can show that you can demonstrate that work experience somewhere else. Question number 2, why are you interested in working in HSBC? Now, those of you who are familiar with our past interview videos will know that I'm always banging on about 5 fast facts. So here are 3 of them. HSBC traces its origin to a trading house from British Hong Kong. The bank opened branches in Shanghai in 1865 and was first formally incorporated in 1866. In 1991, the present parent legal entity HSB Holdings was established in London. We have offices and branches in 64 countries and serve almost 40 million customers. As of 2022, HSBC's revenue stood at just over $50 billion with a net income of $16 billion. And the bank also reported total assets of almost $3 trillion. Now that's just from Wikipedia. If you download the past the interview pack or the research note, which is linked below, we have research for 90 facts about HSBC, as well as 30 or 40 recent interview experiences from successful candidates from all around the world and for different job roles. But the point is, be specific. Do not be generic about the facts that you are delivering. If you are a long-time listener of Job Ready English or the past interview series, you'll know how many times I mentioned that generic answers like HSBC is big, it would be really helpful, I'd have a great experience. Like, these are boring answers and they're not going to help you. They're not going to serve you in your interview. Question number 3, what do you know about HSBC's products and services? Now, of course, HSBC has an enormous range of products and services. I would highly recommend, before you have an interview for HSBC, that you look into the products and services both on their website and also on competitors' websites, so you can learn a little bit more about the products. When I talk about learning about the products, I don't mean you could sell the product or you know the technical minutiae of it, but just knowing how many are there, what's a 1-sentence explanation for each of them, and just being roughly able to explain those. Bearing in mind, for a video interview, you could have your notes sitting in front of you, printed off, or on a second screen. So you don't need to memorize these off by heart, but having some familiarity is going to help you. Question number 4, how do you stay up to date with financial trends? Now, some of you who are applying to HSBC will be really into finance and trading and this and that. And some of you couldn't care less and probably don't even know what Bloomberg News is. I definitely don't watch it anymore. So what you want to do is kind of get into the habit. If you're watching this and just aspirationally at some point you'd love to work at HSBC, then think, okay, what's a newsletter that I can sign up to that delivers the latest UK finance news once a week. Or maybe I could read BBC Business News, or some kind of roundup or bulletin. I find is easier because it just gets delivered to your inbox, and hopefully you don't subscribe to 1,000 different newsletters. Some of you will be more comfortable reading Bloomberg or Reuters or CNBC, or perhaps even the Financial Times or The Economist. Now, you can say whatever you want in terms of answering this question. Obviously, the more that you're doing, the better. But just a minimum baseline that I always say to people is, look, just some sort of newsletter once a week, or set a Google alert for HSBC news or finance news or something like that. Google alerts are absolutely amazing. You could set them to deliver to you daily, weekly, or monthly, and really look for any keywords that are just on your mind. Question number 5, give me an example of a time when you had to work as part of a team to achieve a goal. Now, this is a competency question which you'd answer using STAR: situation, task, action, result. Expect to get 1 or 2 competency questions. Now, really, all you're trying to do here is just demonstrate great teamwork. Ideally, that would be from your work experience. If not, something which is non-academic. If you have neither of those, then something which is academic. Is one better than the other? Well, kind of, yeah. Because if you're applying for a job, then you want to relate some form of work experience. If you don't have it, there's no point moaning about it, and you can use your academic studies. That's absolutely fine. Now, one thing you want to do is just be really clear as, like, where were you and when was this? In my second year of university last year, I was blah at blah. What was the task? So what specifically is it that you had to do? Very often when I'll listen to people on one-to-ones, they don't give enough detail. So it's very vague. Basically because people assume that I know what they're talking about, when of course I don't, because I've never met them before. So just explain it like I'm a stranger. That's the best way to understand it. You know, in my second year of university at Manchester University, during my economics module, I had to prepare a presentation with 3 other people based upon whatever, right? So just explain it to me like a complete stranger. I know nothing about you, where you've been to university, and of course, when you're young, you tend to think that everybody knows what you're talking about, but we really don't, because we kind of have our own lives and stuff, right? The majority of your answer needs to be in the action. I would say at least 70% of your answer. So when you're trying to demonstrate teamwork, just look up what are the key skills for teamwork. You can go and check out our 28 most common questions answered book, check out one of our courses. That's all contained in the past interview pack down in the description below. Whatever it is, just pick out 4 or 5 key skills, key actions that show that you're good at teamwork, and you'll be golden for this answer. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to Job Test Prep. We've used them for many, many years, and I have a really good relationship with their management team. This is something that I've used with our own clients. They're also probably one of only 2 or 3 products that we actually recommend to everybody, and we recommend on this channel. A couple of weeks ago, I had somebody actually pay me for a one-to-one discuss HSBC's online test. And what she confirmed to me was when she went through the actual test, it was exactly the same as the one on Job Test Prep. When she went through the actual HSBC online test, she said that the questions that she went through on Job Test Prep were incredibly helpful for her, were really, really useful, and she couldn't recommend it highly enough. And we use it for all our clients, and they find it incredibly useful to use. So if you want the best test provider, in my opinion, for HSBC, it has to be Job Test Prep. If you click the link down in the description below, you use the code JobReady, you'll get £10 off a pack. And if you send through your receipt to hello@jobreadyenglish.com, we can make sure that you get your subscription updated from a 3-month subscription to a 1-year subscription for free. So check it out, guys. I hope that you've enjoyed this new look past the interview video, which we feel is a little bit more to the point and a bit more prescriptive for the people that we're trying to help, which are mainly graduates based here in the UK. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Please let us know how you get on with your interview. Bye.